am having, Mac.
The Super Mario Bros. Movie has now surpassed the 2019 remake of The Lion King and has become the third biggest animated movie ever. This movie seems to be breaking records like nobody's business, and there's a reason for it. When you have a character like Mario in a world like the Mushroom Kingdom, you're bound to just have success. This is a very lucrative franchise. Not to mention, the movie actually was pretty good, despite what the rotten reviews had to say. Nevertheless, the movie we were all able to see on the big screen was almost completely different. As I'm sure you already know, when you're in the producing stage of something, you always start off beforehand with coming up with ideas of what you might want to produce. You always throw a couple ideas on the board and see what sticks and what doesn't, and the Mario movie in this process was no different. A little while ago, there was tons of concept art released for the Mario movie, and it made me scratch my head and wonder why a lot of this stuff ended up getting shelved in the first place, because this is just phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, I love what the Mario movie had to offer. It was probably one of my favorite movies of all time, and there might be a little bias in there, but hey, this is a great film in my opinion. But looking at this concept art here, it makes me realize that they had a whole bunch of other Mario series elements that were going to be implemented, but just didn't make the final cut. If I were to guess why most of this stuff didn't find its way in the movie, it's probably due to just time constraints. They likely want to make this movie not too long, which is why it's only an hour and 30 minutes long, and I feel like if you had added a bunch of these concept art images here that you see, you probably would have gotten a maybe 2-hour movie, or even longer. But I don't want to waste any more time. I want to talk about a couple of these images because they are just so much fun in my opinion. The first image I want to talk about here was Luigi outside of a giant mansion with 2 boos, and of course we all know what this is insinuating. It's going straight for that Luigi's Mansion type reference, and I gotta be honest, this is something I actually am kind of glad was not in the movie. Okay, so now hear me out. I think a lot of people, whether you like the movie or not, were always complaining about the fact that the pacing was off. It felt way too fast at some parts, and it didn't really seem to kind of let you sit in a scene for a minute. It just kept moving a little too fast for your liking. And I feel like if they had done a Luigi's Mansion scene here, they probably would have escalated it way too fast and we really wouldn't have gotten to see much of anything, which I think would have been really disappointing. In my opinion, I feel like you could make an entire TV series or a movie about a Luigi's Mansion storyline, and I feel as though to limit it to just a few minutes alone really would not do it justice. I feel like what they did was perfect in the movie, where they kind of gave us a taste of what it would be like to see a Luigi's Mansion type thing happen. Not giving us anything more than what we saw with Luigi in the Darklands is a perfectly fine idea. Granted, I still love this concept art. On that same level of theme here of liking the concept art but not really liking the idea overall is the whole idea of this piece of concept art with the Magikoopa Council. Now I like what they have going on here, as it reminds me of Yoshi's Island and the beginning of that game where basically Kamek was telling all of the other little Magikoopas or whatever to go find baby Mario and kidnap him, but I don't know if I really like the idea for the sakes of this movie having a bunch of different Magikoopas, because it kind of makes Kamek feel, I don't know, a bit not as important. I want to compare Kamek to kind of like the blue shell or spiny shell Koopa from the Mario movie, because I feel like these two characters represent a single identity. They're not a group of individuals, it's just one person. And I want to compare the Koopa Troopas to, like, if you're a Star Wars fan, maybe Stormtroopers might be the best comparison, where they're basically just cannon fodder. They're not really supposed to be remembered as much. But when you see the blue shell or spiny shell Koopa, it's supposed to be like, okay, this guy is like the leader. He's the head honcho. He represents a single person. There's no different version of the blue shell Koopa. It's just one. And I feel like doing that with Kamek, where you only have just one, makes it really kind of known that this is supposed to be the most important guy aside from Bowser. He's Bowser's right-hand man, where if you have a bunch of them, it confuses that concept and makes them of lesser importance. And don't get me wrong, I think this concept art is pretty cool, but it's something I'm glad they passed on. Moving on, I'd like to talk about the next piece of concept art I have here, and that is Fire Mario. Now, this is something we actually did not see in the movie, which I was a little shocked by, because they did tease it a little bit when Mario is fighting DK, but ultimately it just didn't happen. And aside from that, the only power-ups that Mario used were the Super Mushroom, the Tanuki Leaf, and the Cat Bell. That's it. Oh, and of course, the Mini Mushroom as well. I found this to be really surprising because this is like the most iconic Mario power-up after the Super Mushroom, yet Mario didn't even get a chance to use it. Yet characters like Peach and DK even, who no one was expecting, got a chance to use it. All things considered though, I don't really have a problem with them not using it because I like the power-ups that Mario did use because Tanuki is just my favorite, so it didn't really matter to me that much. Next up, let's talk about the Ice Kingdom, where the penguins reside. Now, this unfortunately didn't get a whole bunch of screen time in the movie, it was only in the beginning, but the concept art indicates that we probably would have seen a lot more of it, as there's even a little penguin coffee shop, and also a little penguin skate park. So yeah, there was a whole bunch of things they wanted to do with this, but ultimately it just didn't happen. But this is exactly what I mean when I say that this movie would have been infinitely longer if we had actually seen this concept art come to fruition, because there's a lot they wanted to do with this that just did not happen. All we saw was like the Penguin King, do you yield, and all that stuff happen, but none of this. And if this all did happen, we probably would have seen probably an extra 5 or so minutes added to the scene, or maybe even longer than that. But I would argue we probably would have gotten an entirely different scene in itself, because it doesn't even look like they were even trying to set up some sort of penguin king in the first place. It just looked like they wanted to have these penguin people just kind of chilling out in this ice kingdom. It doesn't even look like they had any intentions of having a castle at all, because if you look here at this piece of concept art in the background, it looks like all there is to it is just a nice little city made of ice, and that's it. I'm not really sure which outcome I prefer, because I like what they have going on here with all of these penguins, but I also really like the Penguin King and what they did with him. So to pick one over the other would be kind of difficult in my opinion. Switching gears here, what if I told you that Mario ended up in the Mushroom Kingdom in an entirely different way in the concept art than in the actual movie itself? So get this, Mario falls straight from the ceiling onto this giant round table, and surrounding the table are a bunch of toads, but they're not just any toads. As you can see here, we have Captain Toad, Toadette, and Toadsworth. This is something that I'm really sad about. While I like the role of the blue toad that we see in the movie, I feel like that job could have easily been fulfilled by Toadsworth. And I mean, Toadette was referenced in the movie as we did see her on a poster, but that's really it. But this concept art really led me to believe that Nintendo was trying to really get rid of Toadsworth, because there was truly no reason why he wasn't in this movie, and we got this blue toad instead. And the strange thing is, this isn't the only time we see Toadsworth in concept art either, as he shows up again in this one too. So it's like they really did want to use him, but then ultimately decided towards the end like, nah, let's not, because reasons. But in all seriousness, if I had to guess why Toadsworth didn't end up in this movie, it's likely because they already had Cranky. The two of them already serve as these old man characters who are supposed to be the father of some main character, Peach or DK, and I feel like they would have probably rewrote the same character twice, and they didn't want to do that, so they just kept it at a minimum with Cranky. But to be totally honest, you could have had Toadsworth play the same role as that blue toad, and it would have been perfectly fine. Following this piece, we have Mario looking at a fire flower with Peach and Toadette in the background telling him not to touch it, and behind them we see the frog suit, Tanuki suit, and the feather, or cape feather if you will. Now I thought this one was especially cool because this is like the Mushroom Kingdom has their own armory where they have a bunch of items and weapons stored just in case of a battle, and we see here Mario's looking at the fire flower once again, alluding that Mario's going to use that fire flower power up, but as we know in the final product, that just doesn't happen. It's also pretty cool because we do see a Giga Mushroom and a 1-Up Mushroom, and I'm not sure if they were purposely supposed to represent that, but I do see the colors they had going on there, so I'm going to assume that's what they were trying to do there. With all that said and done, those are like all of the major pieces of concept art that I wanted to show off in today's video. That said, there's some other really cool stuff too, like how the Goddess of Hylia statue shows up in the house where the Mario brothers had their first plumbing job. So it would have been really cool to see a Zelda reference of that kind of sort, but we did kind of already have that here with Toad cooking, which I think is kind of reference. You can pick and choose if you want that to be, I guess. But with that said and done, what was your favorite piece of concept art? I'd love to see what you guys have to say. Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, if you want to see more videos just like this, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and also turn on the post notifications bell, that way you never miss a video from me. You guys do not want to miss what I have to say. But with all that said and done, thank you all so much for watching. This is Sonic signing out. Have a super blessed day, y'all.
Why are you playing that trash?